So in this new global economy, countries are constantly sending out stuff that other countries need and buying stuff that they need from those other countries. There is trade going back and forth at all times. And if the balance of what you're sending out exceeds what you're having to buy to bring in, if your exports exceed your imports, they say you have a surplus, and that is considered to be favorable. And if you think about it, it makes sense. When we sell something, that's income. When we buy something, that's an expense, and everybody wants to have more money coming in than they have to send out. The opposite of a trade surplus is a trade deficit. That is when you're importing more goods than you are sending out to the rest of the world. In which case your expense for international trade is greater than the revenues you're generating by selling goods to other countries, and you have a net deficit, if you will. Last year, in 2021, the U.S. had the biggest ever trade deficit they've ever had. I believe it was like $90 billion more they brought in than they sent out. It is not an optimal position to be in, but it's not untenable. It's not something that means your economy is, in a terrible, terrible place. I would think a big part of that was COVID rules. There was a lot of other countries that had more lax stuff when it came to production, opened up their facilities earlier, operated them with more people in tight spaces, etc. They were able to produce more where we couldn't with the laws that we had in place, which necessitated us having to import more goods because we couldn't keep up with the production capacity of, say, China or Japan. So importing and exporting is just goods going back and forth, and that is the balance of trade that you have. Expansion of that is the balance of payments, and that is all money that comes from one country to another. So essentially it is just trade plus things like tourism, foreign aid, military expenditures, and direct foreign investment. It is not just are we buying and selling goods, but what amount of our country's money is going to another entity? What amount of money are we sending a nation through the tourism that we send there and the foreign aid that we help them with and installing military bases, etc. there, and directly investing in the infrastructure of that country, which we'll get to in a minute. And the goal always, in like everything, is to have more money coming in that's going out. So for your balance of payments, you want to have more come in than you send out to another country. So who is doing the trading? And as you can see from the chart right here, most trade in the world predominantly happens through three regions. It is North America, Europe, and Southeast Asia is the biggest part. Our biggest trade partners for sure are definitely India and China, though we do a fair amount of importing from Canada and Mexico as well. Most of our goods that are sent out to other places, India is a huge spot for us to send produce and food, but that's not the end of it. We send that stuff to all over the world. So how, under what terms and agreements do goods go back and forth? It's not just we make it here, we sell it to you, you make it at your place, you sell it back to us. There's a whole bunch of different types of agreements. You can have strategies for getting into a new expanding global market, and they involve the following, which is licensing, exporting, franchising, contract manufacturing, international joint ventures and or strategic alliances, and foreign direct investment. Let's look at them one by one. Licensing. What is licensing? It is granting someone permission for a fee to make something that is your product, that is underneath your brand. And the best thing I can think of for this is American sports leagues. American sports leagues are licensed exclusively to a particular company for all areas of the world. The NFL in China will have the soft drink sponsor of the NFL in China. They license out agreements all over the place to people. And Marvel is another one as well. Marvel Studios is owned by Disney. They don't manufacture all of the toys that they make for Spider-Man and Iron Man. They send them out to other toy manufacturing companies. A lot of those are produced in another area, and that area, when that other company makes it, it's not like they have to put it out as a Disney product. They put it out under their own brand. They're just officially licensed by Disney to make Marvel figures. Franchising is a similar concept, but with one big distinction. And when you license, that other company has the ability to make things as they see fit, make the products they think people are going to buy. They're just basically buying the rights to make goods through your intellectual property. With franchising, the franchise itself has a fair bit of control over the operations of the places that they're sending to. And I'm going to skip right to McDonald's over here, the most heavily franchised company in the world. McDonald's central organization tells people what they can do at McDonald's. They have to buy all of the containers for Big Macs and the soft drink cups, etc., from central planning, from McDonald's headquarters. That they can't, go shopping and look for the best price. That is in their franchise agreement. They have to have all of their branding, mascots, etc., approved by that central organization. And so I guess what I'm getting at here is with franchising, you have some leeway to make it your own franchise. If you look at the picture, we don't have any McDonald's that look like that in upstate New York. But everything has to be approved by the central area. The nice thing about this, though, is they do give you that leeway, which allows you to cater to regional taste. That allows the people that run your franchise to use their own expertise in that area's customs, dietary restrictions, etc., to make the McDonald's that they are operating the best that they possibly can. And here are some examples of some McDonald's menu items where that is put into practice. We have in Malaysia the Burger Ayam McD made with chicken strips. And why is that? It's because, and same thing with Egypt with the McArabia, which is also grilled chicken. In both of those countries, they don't eat beef. The cow is a sacred animal under most religious practices, practiced in Malaysia and Egypt. Therefore, there's no point in having it on the menu. No one would want to go to McDonald's if you were selling a Big Mac in Cairo, Egypt. So the franchise has had the authority to fit the menu in the way that best fits the customs of their area. On the bottom, Israel, kosher butchering is a very big thing in Jewish practice. In McDonald's in Israel, they have to comply with the use of a kosher kitchen to make everything. And then Germans will go to the second to the bottom bullet for the fun one to end with. They love their beer. You can buy beer at McDonald's when you're in Berlin, something you're not going to see in Syracuse or New York City or anything. So franchises have to have things approved, and they have to buy certain things from the central agency. But at the same time, they do have the leeway to make it their own, which is a way to get your products into all areas around the world and have them operate in the most efficient way, which doesn't require your company to go and send out their own branch over there. They're basically outsourcing productive operations to people in the know. Contract manufacturing is for private label goods. You'll see this everywhere. I think any piece of clothing you're wearing right now is made through contract manufacturing. It is where you pay another entity to make your brand, to make the goods that you make, and it has the brand name and the trademark, etc., of your company on it. They just produce it and then they send it back to you. And a lot of textiles are made through contract manufacturing in places like Taiwan and Vietnam, but they still contain the logo of U.S. companies. Nike has not made a piece of apparel inside the United States, I don't believe, in like 20 years. They contract manufacture pretty much everything that they produce that goes out into the world. Joint ventures are where a company from one area and a company from another area of the world come together with a concept that's going to require the both of them. And I like Uber and Volvo. I think it's a great example of this. That little picture in the bottom left corner you see is a self-driving Uber car. Volvo built these vehicles to be as safe as humanly possible. Uber, that big thing sitting on the roof, is their technology that's proprietary that allows this car to self-drive and know where to go when someone goes on their app and says, I need an Uber. Uber doesn't make cars, so they needed Volvo's involvement. And Volvo doesn't have all of the technology that Uber has for, scheduling, etc. So this is a very strategic alliance where two companies from different areas of the world came together and used their expertise to make one product. And this is starting to launch in Europe. I don't think the American market is quite ready for this yet. I think the European market is much more adaptable to a self-driving car to using some form of public transportation at all times instead of having your own car is just a better place to involve it. Uber knows that, so that's why they went into the strategic alliance. They are running it out in an area where the market's going to be more receptive to their new product, and hopefully they want to expand this concept to the rest of the world. China is a interesting one on this because they mandate a lot of strategic alliance and joint ventures when people want to do business in China. If you want to come in, China, which controls a lot of their businesses from central government, is going to say, we need, to have our name on this as well. How are you going to incorporate our companies into your plan to expand operations into our borders in order to help us grow our own economy? So that can be another way that a joint venture works. It can be mandated by the government. The benefits of this, again, the big one is shared expertise. Not everybody can be an expert in everything. You need a group that has, a bunch of different areas of expertise. And that's true in business just in general. Like, you have an accounting expert and a marketing expert and an organizational behavior expert. And all of those people probably aren't the biggest experts at the other areas that I just talked about. But if they come together, you have a group of people that have expertise in a vast area of business disciplines. And that is the same concept for the strategic alliance. Again, Uber and Volvo, going back again, they each have the technology. They're each sharing in the risk of this, but the technology that they're providing is not the same. They're experts in different areas of it. The drawback of this, though, is that you have more voices in the process, I guess. Like, anytime you have a whole bunch of people trying to come to one consensus agreement on how to do something, it makes it harder and harder and harder the bigger that group is. It's much easier for a very small company that's run by, like, say, 7-8 people to come to a agreement in full than it is for an entity that's run by, say, 300 people. So the more voices that you bring into discussions, negotiations, whatever you want to call them, the harder it is to get along. And that can lead to one partner breaking ties. Another type of strategic alliance that we have here that's not so much a joint venture, like they're not making a uniform product, they are keeping their own separate products, but they're still working together, is Starbucks and Barnes & Noble. Starbucks makes coffee. Barnes & Noble is a book agency, an entertainment company, if you will. Well, some people like to read books while they drink their coffee, so it makes sense for Starbucks and Barnes & Noble to come together to provide that uniform experience that their customers want. Going in, getting a coffee, sitting down, reading a newspaper, reading the book that you want to, listening to whatever music Barnes & Noble has, etc. So you will find a Barnes & Noble in most places that has a Starbucks as well. They keep their operations separate, so they don't have the problem of, what I was talking about before, too many voices in one room. They don't share the cost. They don't share the risk. They Starbucks does the coffee end, Barnes & Noble does the books end. But at the same time, they don't, share in the profits here. Starbucks profitability is just their end of coffee being sold. Barnes & Noble is just their end of books being sold. So if one of those two things drops in demand, it's only going to affect the one party in the strategic alliance and not both. So they're not pooling their resources. They're still looking out for themselves, but they know that working together will give a better overall experience to their customers. And then lastly, we have foreign direct investment, which is like the most extreme form of getting your product into a foreign market. That is where you go and you physically build an extension of your business on foreign soil. You make a foreign subsidiary, you make a gigantic manufacturing and distribution center in an area of the world where you've not been doing business before. The advantage of this is you have control over everything. Everything is still yours. It's your production facility. It's your distribution facility. If you're rebranding, you own all of those brands in the area for the goods that you're going to distribute. So you have complete control. You don't have to worry about the other party that's involved in your joint venture. You don't have to worry about approving everything that a franchisee is going to ask you to do to make their location different. You have complete control over everything. The problem is, since it's just you have to commit all of the funds and technologies to build all of those things that I just talked about. So foreign direct investment gives you the most control. It gives you the lure of the most profitability in the future, but it requires the most, as they call it, outlay, the most amount of money to get started selling products in that different area of the world than you had before. Here is a fun slide that I'll end this portion of the lecture on. What is a foreign product and what is a domestic product is a very blurring line, especially in the auto industry. Toyota and Honda are both Japanese car companies who have made huge foreign direct investments in mostly the southeast of eastern area of America, maybe a little bit of the Midwest, but in that general location, tons of plants coming out where they're making these cars locally and they're selling them into the American market, not having to pay for shipping and all of that stuff. Toyota and Honda's cars are actually more American than Chevys and Fords because those parts are manufactured here with new facilities that they've made. Chevy and Ford still outsources a ton of production for the individual parts of their cars, and they have them shipped back to their locations in Michigan, where most of their operations come from, to put them together and assemble the cars to sell here. So it's kind of funny to think about, but with foreign direct investment, it is really becoming one big global marketplace instead of, this company's from country A, this company's from country B. It's kind of like, yeah, that's a multinational company. That company operates everywhere.